Today I'm going to show you how to make a bridge card using the Night in Bethlehem stamps and dies. This card is sized so that you can get 2 card bases out of one 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock. Before I start showing you on the card, I want to show you how I store the clear mount stamps and die sets. I get the magnetic vent covers from Home Depot, cut it to fit the inside, and just lay the dies on top of it. I lay it with the cutting side up and it holds better that way. Next, what I do is with the clear mount stamps, I peel the liner sheet back from the stamps, and then once I have done that, I just mount that to the inside back of the case. And that way I know when I put stamps away, as long as all of the holes are filled, that I have all of the stamps there. I do not put the labels on the backs of the stamps because I don't think that they stick to the blocks well enough that way. If a stamp set does not have dies, I just leave the labels loose inside. If the stamp set does have dies like this one, I will then stick the labels just in the backside liner. So now let's get started on the card itself. This card, even though it only uses half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, it will not fit in the standard A2 envelope because the finished card ends up being 7.5 inches wide by the 4.25 tall. It is a freestanding card. Has nice dimension to it. So let's go ahead and get started on this. First of all, the pieces that you need for it are, you need a piece of cardstock for the background, 4.25 inches by 10.5 inches. For the label to put on the back of the card, cut a piece of white cardstock 4 1/8 inches by 3 1/4 inches. The other items that you will need to do is stamp Mary and Joseph on the donkey and the shepherd with the sheep, and then after they are stamped, I cut them out. I feel that if I cut after I stamp, I get far better margins on them than I do otherwise. The tape that I like to use to keep the cutting die in place over my stamped image is the Post-it note tape. It comes in a roll that looks like this. So after you run this through your Big Shot or Cuttlebug or whatever die cutting machine you have, you then end up with these 2 pieces. Next thing that you will cut out is the cityscape. First of all, you will cut them out using your die on top of the right side of the paper. After you cut each of those, you, of course, end up with these 2 pieces. You then need to do something a little bit differently. I want to have a second piece of this, but I want to have it the mirror image. So I then cut it from the back side of the paper. If you have paper, if you're using paper that is the same on both sides, it doesn't make any difference which side you cut it from. But it happened to be that I used a paper that was white on the back, so I had to make sure I then cut it from the back side of it so that I would end up with a mirror image of that one. All right, now the next thing that you do is start working on the card background. What you will do is make a mark on it that is 5 1/4 inches from the edge, which will put it at the middle of your cardstock, and also put another mark 1 1/2 inches down from the top on each side. These marks are what you line up on your cutter to get your diagonal cut. So line your marks up 1 1/2 inches there to the center mark there, and cut. Then from the center mark to the 1 1/2 inch mark and cut. The next step in this process is to stamp your background. And I do the stamping on it before I do any scoring so that I don't have bumps that I'm trying to stamp across. Well, now with the magic of video, I already have one that I have done the stamping on. On this particular card, I decided to use Versamark ink and gold embossing powder. You can use whatever ink or combinations of ink and stamping that you want to use on it. Now, you will do your scoring on it. The first score line, you place your paper at 8 3/4 inches. Score. Move it over to 7 inches. Score. Next, you move the edge to 3 1/2 inches and score, and then to 1 3/4 inches and score. At this point, what I do is I take the cardstock that I cut for the sentiment that I will stamp and put on the back, a signing post. I adhere the cardstock to the back of it so that I know exactly where I'm going to want it. Tape it so that it stays in place using removable tape. I use the same type of tape that I use when I cut images out. And then I draw lines there. And then I line that up in the groove on the cutter and trim those off. And I know then that without trying to calculate angles, I will have the correct angle across the top that I want to have match on my card. I generally do not adhere this sheet to the back until after I have done the stamping on it, because this way, if you make a mistake, you can either turn it over, throw it out, whatever, and cut a new one instead of having a mistake that's already firmly adhered to your card. All right, now we're getting into the card assembly. What you want to do is take one of the two larger, deeper pieces and adhere it to the back. The way that I did it was that I used the one that had been cut from the top side to do it. You can use whatever type of adhesive you like. I particularly like this needle nose bottle and the Limeco adhesive. I think that it is a very strong adhesive, and I can better control where I want to put it. All right, now this one, you just mostly center in there. Okay. Now, again, you need to do some scoring on it. The lines that you've already scored, you just go over them again because you want to score that die cut piece. And I go over that part of it a couple of times. And again, I move over to the score line there and go over it a couple of times. Now, since the back of it is together, I go ahead and fold and crease those lines. And then the end wings, fold those back and crease them. Fold it back and crease it. The next piece that I put in is the mirror image of the one that's already been adhered. What I will do at this point is, on this one, I will cut it down to 4 3/4 inches, which is just a smidge off it. It is approximately 4 7/8 inches, but you only want to have 4 3/4 inches left on it. So I've slivered that off. Then you will score it at 5/8 of an inch from each of the two ends. And again, 5/8 of an inch from the other end. And if you're switching ends on it, make sure that you're grabbing your scoring blade if you're using the Stampin' Up! Trimmer and not the cutting blade. Now, carefully fold these two ends forward. And put some adhesive on one of the folded ends. You want to have enough adhesive so that it sticks, but not so much that it spills over. And you adhere it about 1/8 of an inch back from the front edge. And make sure that you have, when it's lying flat, you have it straight along that back side. Next, put your adhesive on the other end. And again, you adhere it about 1/8 of an inch back on this other side. So it's starting to come together now. The next part is to set your shorter piece on the front and decide approximately where you want to have it. I set it further back on this edge because Mary and Joseph take up more space there, and gave a little bit extra room over here. So what I'm going to do is put glue on the back of the one end to the approximate portion that I wanted to have there. And once that is in place, let it dry just a bit. When your card is lying flat, you can see that it's everything from this building over that you want to have glued. And again, with it lying flat, glue that down. You don't want to glue it when it's all folded up, because if you do that and you don't get it quite exactly in place, it's not going to lie flat. So you now have that glued. And it is a simple matter now to glue these on. Depending on whether you're mailing it or not, for a little bit added dimension, you could put the two sets of figures on the front with dimensionals. I just don't happen to have any handy here, so I am just gluing them on flat. All right, now your card is finished. All you need to do is do your stamping on this portion of it and glue or use double-side tape, and you will have your sentiment and signature adhered to the back of it. This is a very simple card. Once you've made a couple of them, it goes together well, one that you can easily mass produce if you're wanting to send them out as your Christmas card. Thank you.